Hey, so this is my first ever podcast. I did this with Adrian. He spends his free time doing music production and DJing in Cork. So we talk about the technical aspects of those kind of things and some other stuff. So I hope you enjoy. Also, if you want to check out my other channel, Electro Manifesto, next week I'm going to post a more creative style podcast on music and production and things like that. Thanks. How did you get started with like doing music production? First of all.
It's almost a deep philosophical question, yeah. Well, I think
Because
as a teenager, it's really, I think it was a byproduct of spending a lot of time on the computer. I think when I was younger, when I was a teenager or whatever,
right.
and I think just an interest in listening to music led me to become interested in DJing and then making music.
Yeah.
That's sort of the
I
the
think
path
that
that I
that
followed.
seems to be the way for a lot of people who you notice a crossover between music production and people who basically do a lot of computer stuff. Obviously, because
Hmm.
they're sitting at the computer and they decide, "Hey, can I be creative with this?" You know?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So yeah, like we're looking at like music production is a funny one because it used to be kind of like a very exclusive thing in a really expensive studio. But like nowadays, people are using all sorts of like crazy ways to like hook up their setups and like even if you see in the background behind you, you have the synthesizers all lined up. Um,
Yeah, there's one or two there. Yeah.
what do you think are like some essentials for someone looking to get into music production? Like
Uh,
if they're just
well,
looking for a home setup, they're trying to keep it real minimal. What do you think? Because I have a few
yeah,
things that I would think you would need, but what do you think?
yeah. Well, it's really a matter of budget, but I think if you're just looking to experiment with it, um, it's the most basic thing you can get is just a MIDI controller, just a little basic MIDI controller. Do have a very basic one around here, but it's not to hand immediately. But basically,
Right.
just something inexpensive and something you can just play a few notes on, and not necessarily something that's really nice to touch, and the keys aren't that great on it. But it's something that you can experiment with, and you can get a feel for using the equipment. And
Yeah.
there's nothing stopping you making something
What
amazing with that either.
for people who maybe don't know, like what is a MIDI controller? Like what is that like?
It is so MIDI is to really get into the tech side of it. MIDI is a protocol that was invented in the 80s. It's called Musical Instrument Digital Interface. So essentially, it's sending the information from your keyboard to the computer.
Right. Yeah.
So like when you press a key, that's a note on message. When you lift it up, it's a note off message. And then there's also, if there's any knobs or other controls, then when you move that, you get sends an update message, a control message. There's things like a sustain pedal. All those things go over MIDI, and it's sends that pretty much immediately when it can.
Yeah.
And then it can also clock things, so you can make it send pulses. To be very specific, it's like 24 times per beat, and that can be used to synchronize different musical instruments together, or a computer with musical instruments,
Cool.
or
Cool. I was
anything like
wondering,
that.
actually with MIDI stuff, I've seen people doing some like wacky stuff, and a friend of mine in Limerick, he was like plugging it into an Apple and like picking up off the Apple like MIDI signal, and then being able to do all sorts of stuff with that, or like even with water. But I'm just wondering, like, do people use MIDI for like other stuff? Because I know, could you use it for like visuals and stuff? I don't. I've never actually looked into that.
Yes, so it can be. It is extremely versatile, really, because as I explained there previously, it's literally just the info of what am I touching now. When did it go down? When did it go up? How hard was it pressed? What else was
Yeah.
adjusted? So it really is versatile and it can be used for anything. I think for visuals, certainly it is used for controlling like live stage lighting or visuals in the background. Something that might be projected behind someone on stage. Something like that. So
Yeah,
that sort
cool.
of it could be used for doing transitions between different effects, or you could be using it for just setting the tempo of what's being played.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's particularly useful in a live environment for visuals.
Do you know of any, like, when I'm thinking of live sets, I'm thinking like, like, is it mode selector? Um, I know that they
Mm-hmm.
have like a crazy visual effects going on. They do some sort of crazy visuals with the stuff they're doing. But I'm wondering, is there any like good example of someone that really pushes the barrier and that kind of stuff?
I don't think I'm the exact right person to ask for that, but there are certainly some very good people at that. I think mostly in Central Europe, really. I think Berlin is definitely a hotbed of these experiences. In the
Yeah,
Netherlands too, Amsterdam and Berlin, I think, and
it's where you get all
just other cities around that
the
Northern
best
Europe.
music
Yeah,
clubs. Yeah, for
yeah, but it's
sure.
also I think it's also where you get a coming together of technical people and music people, and then they create
That's
an experience.
That's funny. I never thought about it like that. Like to think like, yeah, because it makes sense. Like Germany being such an industrial place, and Holland as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
that they would be so heavily into that kind of stuff. 'Cause I never
Mm-hmm.
that
And
never clicked with me. I never really understood why they had such good electronic music.
and
Yeah,
the north of Belgium, I think, is also quite a hotbed for that stuff.
yeah. What about Ireland? Do you think we have much going for us in that direction, or
Uh,
it's a hit and
it's
miss?
hard. It's hard for me to say because I gravitate towards people like that. But
Yeah,
there are certainly people out there who are doing interesting things or attempting to.
yeah.
But I think we could push the boundaries a lot more in terms of the live experiences that we bring to people. And I think
Yeah, definitely.
there's there is a time for that.
I think
It's not now; it's next year or something. But there is a time for that.
yeah, yeah. Of course, we're gonna have to wait a few months before uh, we start a whole new scene. Um, yeah, like looking at like some stuff that you can do with coding and music as well. I was actually looking into this thing before we started this podcast called Sonic Pi. I don't know if you
Mm-hmm.
ever heard of it. Um, Basically, it looks like Python, but you're basically able to program each aspect of your music. So you could put like a sleep timer, or you could insert a synthesizer by literally just typing it out in code and telling it how often you want to play that note and stuff. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think it
I
might.
think this may be something Aphex Twin, started in the early '90s, where rumor has it at least he was writing algorithms to generate the music, and
All
I
right.
think at that time that probably would have involved C code or something like that,
I did not know they were
which
doing
would
that.
still be quite relevant, with real time audio.
Yeah. Like, is that just what you've heard, or is that legit that they've?
I've definitely discussed this, but I never went and verified it, so
All right. No,
let's
no,
not
that
put me on the record as saying anything like that.
that'd be cool to look into actually, because doing that in the 90s as well, that's groundbreaking, like to think that far ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know
Mm-hmm.
there is a lot of like artificial music now that you can generate pretty easily, right? But yeah,
To a degree.
yeah,
I think the human element still wins out in most cases.
yeah. You always need that creativity, I suppose.
I think
Um,
a computer could generate tech house, but I don't think a computer could generate, trip hop. I think it's down to the variance of the music itself.
yeah, like that. I guess there's like something incorrect about like certain types of music that actually makes it correct, that a computer can't
Mm-hmm.
might have a hard time to understand.
Mm-hmm. It's just natural human instinct that even when you put it through a load of digital layers, it still shines through. The human touch and that. And I think the resolution of MIDI, is high enough to capture this. But if you do quantize things a bit, you sort of you can lose that human element, to the music that you're recording.
What do you use? Like, well, I know that you're using Ableton, but what difference do you think it makes, like using using software like Ableton to make your music, and like actually recording it maybe live or not using any kind of software, like?
Yeah, so I think I'm going through a bit of a transition at the moment, and I'm trying to get, when I'm initially jamming, a piece of music or a tune, I like to do it all outside the box first, and I can achieve that by, so I have a Korg Electroid, and that acts as a sequencer that can sequence everything else. Then I have a chord bot too, which can also do some sequencing. But a limitation I have is that I can't pass MIDI through this Electroid, so I'm repurposing a Raspberry Pi at the moment to loop and pass MIDI messages around, so that hopefully I can do everything outside the box to a certain point. So what I want to do is to be able to get like maybe a 6-minute tune out and record a basic structure, arrange it, and then record that audio. And then at that point, when everything is, when I've experimented with it and when I've kind of enjoyed jamming it, then I can record it in and bring it into Ableton and, put in more variation, make it a bit more interesting.
Cool.
But I think it's good to initially do that.
Yeah.
That outside the box if you can. But there's merit for both approaches. It's really what suits you.
Yeah. All right. Cool. And you were just saying there, like you're using a Raspberry Pi to basically sync your different synthesizers. Is that what you're saying, or?
Yeah. Well, synchronization and also passing of MIDI messages between them. So I'd like to be in a situation where I can configure the Pi probably through some sort of app, very basic app that I can make that just allows you to
what are you going to code all of this in, actually, just out of curiosity?
C++, definitely.
Okay.
So it has this has to be very efficient. So I think the amount of times per second, this could have to run maybe 400 or 500 times a loop. That does quite a lot. Like it's taking in. It has to poll the two MIDI devices connected and then send to the output.
Yeah.
And it has to take the loop into account too, if you're recording it, if you're not. So there's quite a bit going on. And I think it might take a bit of adjusting the resolution, trying to get the algorithm a bit better. But I do think that the Raspberry Pi is quite capable of that. Certainly if it's headless, if you're not wasting resources on a GUI.
Yeah.
I think you can get quite a bit out of it.
Okay, so you're gonna try to keep it as minimal as possible, like.
Yeah.
Now
just something I can use to jam without having to go into software straight away.
That's cool. All right. What else? So
you yourself have a bit of a minimalistic setup, I believe.
I mean, at the moment, all I have going really is a micro Korg synthesizer.
Classic.
Yeah. And my, I don't know if you can see it back there, but I have my keyboard as well.
Yes.
And I have an APC 40, which is like, it's a MIDI controller for Ableton. And that's handy for like, moving in and out samples and stuff like that. But yeah, I need to get into some recording in the next few weeks and get everything up and running. Yeah.
Well, it's a shame you can't come visit at the moment. I'm sure. I think you'd enjoy this setup here.
Yeah, it's looking nice now with the way you have it going. And the HS8s as well make all the difference for the sound quality.
Yeah, they're very nice monitors, HS8s. I think for the, they're
Cool.
they're relatively cheap as monitors go. They're really really good.
How much are we looking at as relatively
But I think
cheap?
for a lot of people, HS7s will suffice,
Yeah.
or
Alright.
even HS5s really in a lot of cases.
And speaking of like starting out, like, so someone should get, like, you're saying someone should like look at getting a MIDI controller, and then what, like, software wise, what would you recommend? Because a lot of this software is pretty expensive actually. Like Ableton, I know, is like €300 or €400. You'd want to really know you're going to use it if you're going to be
a lot of a lot of these basic MIDI controllers, or certainly some devices, they come with Ableton Live Lite, which is a version of Ableton with 8 channels. So at least if you're just starting out, that can be a useful thing to do, until you know that Ableton is the software for you.
Yeah.
Which I think for a lot of people it certainly is. I think it's really the king of music production software out there at the moment.
Cool.
And has been for some time.
Yeah, I don't see myself moving off it. I did try Reason for a while, and I don't know. It's interesting the way they try to create like a stack you would have in real life. Like you'd have your compressors and your EQs, and it looks like you have them lined up in your GUI. But it's like you're using software. Like you don't want to be limited by the real world. Like you want to be able to just click and it change something. You don't. In my personal opinion, like if you're using the real thing, you're using the real thing. But if you're using software, well then why limit yourself to this kind of strange GUI? I don't know. That's my opinion. But I think Ableton's the way to go as well.
I think it has a very logical layout. No surprise, it comes from Germany, so that's a very, very logical, very straightforward layout. I think you can really tell that it's made by very good programmers, even though it's music production software. It's laid out in a very consistent way. There's a very obvious way to do certain things, but the flexibility is enormous. It makes so much sense. I think that's the key thing.
Speaking as well about your Raspberry Pi, you said you're going to code that in C++. Sorry to jump the topic a bit here, but like, I think one thing people don't think about too much is that latency is a big thing in music, and like especially with when you're dealing with a lot of hardware and software, like we are here, like, would you ever write something in like Java or Python for music software, or do you feel it should just be C++? Or do you think it matters? Like it's all.
Well, I do think that you can even go as far as making web apps that that interact with MIDI and even do some synthesis, software synthesis,
right?
Active synthesizers, but.
Right, you built a web synthesizer too, right? In Java.
I have and JavaScript.
Can people check that out somewhere, or do you want to keep that to yourself for the moment?
If you're able to dig it up, you're able to dig it up. But I don't really have a URL to hand here. Maybe we can put up a link.
Yeah, it'd be cool so people could play
around. I think it might have a few maintenance issues that have built up over as the browsers have changed over the last 2 or 3 years.
So they have to open it in Internet Explorer 8 or something. Right?
Yeah, you have to run it in Internet Explorer version 2 or Netscape.
Netscape. Yeah, that's the one. And any other projects you're working on at the moment that you want to tell us about, Adrian?
There is something I was thinking about. If I can find time between all of these music-related projects or tech projects, as some of them are, I would like to build something for exploring the views from Irish mountains. So,
nice.
So this is certainly a change of topic, but basically, I've built up a lot of really high resolution, photos of the views from mountains. So
Yeah.
like it can all be stitched together, and you get a huge, really detailed photo. So what happens when you actually put it all together, you get this enormous photo, and like the file size is quite big, which will be an interesting challenge here. But essentially, you can zoom in a huge amount on the photo, and like you can pick a small part of it, and when you zoom in, it will still be incredibly detailed.
All right.
So I've done this. So I've done this for a lot of mountains, particularly in Kerry, and I think if you put these together, then I want to have sort of an experience where if you can see another mountain from a mountain, then you can click that and you can go to the view over there, and then like say some things on the ground. If I have pictures of that,
So a
you
bit
can hop
like
around
Google Maps kind of situation, but in high resolution, or
in extreme detail, but also the hopping thing would be a bit different too.
okay, yeah.
So the way by which you navigate, I think it's you can get a sort of a better geographical feel for an area if you do this.
That would be really cool. Yeah.
We'll really have to see how this works out.
Well, let us know how it goes.
I will.
Yeah, I'll definitely be checking that out. But that's a lot of mountain climbing, right? To get all those shots.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it has been done the last few years, but it does go back like
Cool.
5 or 6 years. It's been gathering up all of the
Yeah.
different mountains, different views. Sometimes it's foggy at the top, sometimes it isn't. So when it isn't, I take full opportunity of that and take a few pictures.
All right. Well, next time we have you on, and if next time you have your project done, we could have you on again. You could explain to us the process in a bit more detail. Sounds like a cool project to do.
If it ever happens, I will consider that, Jane.
Cheers, Adrian. If you guys want to check out more podcasts or stuff I do, all my tech stuff will be on this channel, and then all my other artistic stuff will be on Electro Manifesto. I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on all the platforms. So be sure to check us out, and I'll be doing podcasts like this hopefully every week.